Okay,
So
cool.
that's why my Zoom had to update.
Oh
Um,
no, yeah, it always has it always has to do something. Um, so yeah, on Socialist News and Views, we let folks introduce themselves. Do you want to just tell our audience who you are?
course. So I'm Alannah, or otherwise known as a.k.a. 1984. I'm 27. I'm from Melbourne, Australia. And basically, I'm using my assets, being my degree in development and my sex appeal, to spread class consciousness and ignite revolutionary spirit in the enslaved working class in order to plant the seeds for the dictatorship of the proletariat.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, and the title for this podcast comes from your tagline on Instagram. It says, "quote Ushering in the socialist matriarchal revolution, one thirst trap at a time, 100." End quote. And now I believe the last reel of yours I saw on Instagram, it said day 57 of posting thirst traps for class consciousness. Um, what's been your experience so far? Is it a gimmick? Is it a solid political strategy? You've done it. What's your experience with this experiment of yours?
So I would say my experience overall has been so far positive. I obviously do get comments saying that using my sexuality to spread socialist theory is counterintuitive, as their argument is often that sex work is anti-Marxist, which I don't fully agree with. I actually think that this particular take is more to do with sensibility politics and generalized misogyny of what's appropriate and moral behavior for women. And as a woman, you will always get criticism for capitalizing on your sex appeal. So it doesn't matter what the purpose is. But anyway, um, I just think it's really important for us to remember that the pervasive influence of the MAGA movement has in part to do with their appeal to working class individuals through social media. And there is a reason that there are and have been so many bot accounts by the Trump campaign and administration, because social media is currently the most effective strategy at politicizing the electorate. It's the contemporary mode of communication, and this will be the medium for proliferating socialism once we actually see a boom in socialist media that actually reaches the working class people the way that MAGA was able to. And as we all know, the manosphere has been extremely effective at indoctrinating Gen Z and millennial men into abiding by patriarchal capitalist dogma. And additionally, we also know how prolific OnlyFans has become. So this is the present cultural and material conditions that we are working with as socialists. And so where I come in is developing my strategy in honing in on the power of sex appeal on social media to spread class conscious discourse. Is it a gimmick or an effective political strategy? Time will tell, but I am very much in the belief that it's effective. I've just finished reading a book on the psychology of media. And something that I've learned on the psychological power of media is this concept of cognitive priming, whereby exposure to a stimulus will subconsciously influence your response to later exposure of a related stimulus. So, if people viewing my content who are perhaps susceptible to the manosphere, right-wing rhetoric, who then associate the ruling class as simply the government or even like the Illuminati.
Sure.
If these people don't understand that the ruling class are actually bourgeois capitalists who are then now exposed to content that is actually explaining that to them, boosted through an algorithm that appeals to media that they already consume, then that I think does plant the seeds for critical thinking and class consciousness. And yeah, like I said, we really cannot underestimate the power of social media. It is a major reason why Trump is in office. It's the reason why Musk bought Twitter. I'm not calling it X, that's cringe, but social media, hate it or love it, it does influence the working class. And as socialists, we have for far too long allowed right-wing media to dominate political content. And now we are paying the price. So while my particular strategy may not resonate with everyone, it's going to resonate with enough people who will hopefully become inspired to then create Marxist media of their own in order to reach people that I'm unable to.
And it feels good to you. It feels empowering to you.
Oh,
How would you,
empowering.
or
It's
how would you,
more just like the
useful?
sex appeal aspect. I wouldn't say it's empowering. It's
Sure.
just like powerful,
Absolutely.
like yeah, it's just the way that patriarchy is set. Like patriarchal capitalism has set up sex appeal for women as like a major currency
Hmm.
and a major way to generate an audience and to generate capital. And yeah, like it's
We're playing with the
it's
material
funny. Like
conditions that we
there's
have,
so
like
many
you said.
times where I'm like, filming my content and I'm doing the whole like Britney thing and I'm just like, this is crazy. Like this is fucking crazy. The irony is not lost on me. Like the absurdism is not lost on me that this is the platform that I've decided to use to spread socialist content, but it works.
I mean,
My third
I like your little setup with, Marx and Lenin, peering over your shoulder,
the
and
boys.
it's good. Yeah, I think it works.
Thanks.
I, I was just gonna say, of course, here in the U.S., we're all scrambling around trying to figure out, how we can mobilize as many people as possible in response to this kidnapping. Any thoughts on that? This Latin America, in the U.S. sphere of imperialism, etc.
Oh, you know, I don't know. I don't have the answers in terms of
I know, right?
strategizing. I would just say, like, just really vocally express how abhorrently against it you are. I mean, yeah.
And
Again,
yeah,
people often come to me, they're like, what do you propose? What's the strategy? And I honestly, I don't know.
right.
That's why I'm like getting this information out there is to help others who have better ideas than I do, who are smarter than I in terms of strategy and thinking of the next steps to hopefully inspire them. But yeah,
I
it's
wouldn't even think
it's
I wouldn't even think
really
of it in that. I wouldn't even think of it in that way. I wouldn't sell yourself short and say, people smarter than you. I would say that, we all have to be involved in this process
yeah,
to figure out
exactly.
what the heck is going on, because it's not going to
Yeah.
be, no single one of us can just, figure all this stuff out, manage this whole, chaotic scene that we find ourselves, uh, living in to a greater or lesser degree, depending on oftentimes, just luck of birth or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
um,
literally. The circumstances in which you were born,
it
it's
influences a lot.
insane.
It
Yeah, I
influences a lot.
think Yeah, I think that honestly the most important thing is just not being passive and not allowing others to be passive. The whole like, oh, it is what it is, God, that sucks. What can you do? That fucks me off so much because allowing that to happen is like you are allowing that to happen by being passive. And just yeah, by I mean protesting, it's not the most like it
I
doesn't
think
have the most
it
effective
serves a
result.
few. It serves a lot of functions,
Of
I think.
things.
But yeah, it's.
Yes, definitely. No, protesting is definitely effective. It's often very a slow gratification. But you know, you got to get out there. You got to show the state and the ruling class that you are completely against this, and they're shit scared. Like they hide it pretty well, but they are terrified of the masses. Like they try and minimize our power. They try and undermine how powerful 8 billion people are. They do that through division and racist ideology and spreading fascist bigotry and all that. And it's been very effective, but yeah, I just think it's solidarity, really, I would say is the main strategy for Venezuela. But it's just sick, honestly. Like, I feel like I've seen this before, like how many times is the US imperialist government, the CIA, going
Right.
to, desecrate Latin America? Enough's enough, It's horrendous.
I agree with you. And we literally saw this when the US kidnapped, well, I guess, it literally in 2002, the US kidnapped Hugo Chavez. And he was gone for like 47 hours, and then they had to bring him back because there was so much unrest in the country. I don't know if it's going to play out the same way this time. I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate what you're doing, Alannah.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
and if you get any additional data on like how this strategy is working, I really do think I think it's good that you're thinking of it as a strategy. That's what we need to be thinking about with everything that we're doing, is like how are we moving people into struggle, because that's uh really the most important part. Is there anything else that you want to say or share or mention or plug before you go?
Um, well, I did have notes for the next question.
Oh no, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, yeah. What's your thought? We talked a little bit about the shallowness
Yeah.
of the connection that people might feel to socialism. You know, you mentioned some people will raise this issue that that if you're trying to kind of sell socialism with sexuality, you sort of end up building socialists that may have like a shallow connection to the ideas or something like that. Do you think there's
Yeah.
any validity to that? I mean, I know you talked about it a little bit, but
Uh, so on the book I mentioned previously
yeah,
on psychology and media, it spoke of methods of advertisers who have followed this model of message effectiveness to generate sales and profits. This being exposure, attention, comprehension, acceptance, and retention. So, exposure, reaching the audience, attention, being stimulating enough to retain their focus, comprehension, being understood, acceptance, the message is received, and retention, the message is implanted, even if the source is lost. So I feel my content has intuitively followed this model, as thirst content through the algorithm is one of the best ways to garner exposure and attention to the masses. And I do intentionally present class consciousness in digestible, non-threatening ways for the comprehension aspect. Whether it will be accepted or retained or not is really out of my control, but I am vehemently staunch in my convictions, which is a powerful force for persuasion. Uh, and while I hate advertising and capitalism, we at least do have to acknowledge that their strategies have worked. It's why class consciousness is at an all-time low. We have seen the effectiveness of corporations bombarding the working class with individualistic and consumerist ideology over generations. So, in order to dismantle the hegemonic system, we do have to understand how it maintains its power. And unfortunately, the reality is, under patriarchal capitalism, a woman's value has been reduced to either her sexual desirability or her caretaking capacities. So these are two pillars of value that women have, which is central to her value to men. And whether we like it or not, the reality is that women in the economic market have capitalized on the demand for sexual content. Now, I would like to see a sexually healthy world where all beings can freely engage in sexual expression without fear of shame or judgment or violence. And in this world, we would not systemically use sex as a substitute for emotional regulation or as a means to inflate one's ego. And in this world, people such as myself would be free to openly express their exhibitionist tendencies without their integrity being called into question. But this isn't the reality under the patriarchy. So, if we're going to have any chance at dismantling capitalism, we're going to have to meet the culture where it's at and use the materials that we have. And much of the culture is deeply indoctrinated by red pill content, which then crosses over with Guna communities, meaning that in order to reach this community, we're going to have to develop media that resembles other forms of media that they have already heavily consumed. So, while I do understand why some may argue that my strategy could create a shallow connection to socialism, I do ultimately disagree, as a shallow connection is better than no connection at all. Like
Like,
I've said, class consciousness is at an all-time low, and we really don't have as much time as we think to get our shit together. So while my strategy might not resonate with all, it will resonate with enough to get the ball rolling for socialist rhetoric to be normalized in everyday conversations, which is the foundation for class solidarity and class consciousness. So as socialists, it is our duty to hone in on our creative abilities and present emancipatory politics to the everyday person in a relatable and understandable ways.
I really liked what you were saying when you were outlining the different aspects about how the information can be implanted, but they don't necessarily know where the information comes from, or they don't necessarily remember the source. And I've definitely experienced this, um, because somebody will come back to me and tell me the same thing back to me in the same way that I told it to them about
Yes,
something. And
yes,
so I
I've had
realized
that as
clearly it
well.
tells me both pieces, that number one, they remember what I told them, and number two,
Yeah,
they don't remember that I was the one that told them that. So
exactly.
you can
Yeah,
exactly see that specific thing taking place. And I think it's super important for people to remember that, that the information, the ideas are the important part, and we need to be getting those
exactly.
out there. And like you said,
Yeah,
yeah, sometimes people, art, whatever it is, the different formats can really get into your thinking and can have a big impact on your thinking. So you said you had thoughts on all the questions you kind of mentioned in there too. Do you have a final analysis on strong open sexuality and politics? Are they a good combination or anything like that? Any other final thoughts on that? You don't have to have any. That's fair, but you
I
can as
do
well.
actually.
Please do.
Well, I do believe that part of the aspect of the appeal of previous prominent socialist leaders and thinkers was their sex appeal. Che Guevara, Fidel Castro, Malcolm X, Thomas Sankara, Tupac, Angela Davis, Stalin. These guys were hot. And when you're hot, people pay attention. The content of socialist discourse is not watered down, even if you initially grab your audience's attention for shallow reasons. So while my content is pretty on the nose in terms of honing in on this aspect, I do believe that with enough exposure from others also creating baddie socialist content, we can genuinely have a very large impact on the culture. Never ever underestimate the power of social media and brain rot. It's literally the main reason why Trump got elected and why the world is functioning the way it is today. Um, and I do understand there really is only so much you can do with thirst trap short form content. So for me personally, these forms of content was just a way for me to build up an audience to then transition onto other platforms that I'm currently working on, like Twitch and YouTube. So stay tuned.
Well, yeah, and I'll just also finish by saying that there was supposed to be another person on this interview, so you were gracious enough to just be put on the spot as the only interview participant. And I don't know if that's a thing or not for you, but I appreciate it either way. Um, and yeah, I don't know. Is there anything else you want to share? What is your out of curiosity? What's your highest video number for views or
Good
whatever, or
question.
do you know
Someone
that?
asked that yesterday. Let's have a look.
Let's look. Let's find out. I'd be
Let's have
curious
a,
to hear.
let's have a gaze. Mm, 78K. There's 140. Oh, 227.
Nice.
Um, I would say 227. That looks like the highest
Yeah.
one. So there you go.
Well, good work.
Thanks.
This can be the interview done unless do you have other things?
No,
Uh,
covers it really.